This week we're going to talk a little bit about money and financial peace. Now, I'm licensed, so I can't give you any real specific investment advice or anything like that, but I can talk to you a little bit today about just some basic principles that'll give you more financial peace in your life and some insights into some of the things I see that are very commonly spread on social media by many influencers that I just don't necessarily agree with. And so one of the things that I've been very fortunate to do is to build a pretty significant net worth. And I believe part of that net worth was built because of some basic principles that I've adhered to that I want to share with you. And so let's start from the very beginning. Number one, you have to decide that you want to save and accumulate money. It has to become a priority for you. And I'm going to say some things that sound a little bit contrary to what you hear on social media all the time about. I hear people say, you should get rid of all your money, right? You should use debt like crazy. Debt on appreciating assets you should always use. And there's no reason to save cash. You should be investing all of your money. That's just insane. Like, some of that's true, but this notion that I keep hearing on social media from people that's like, get rid of all your money and so that you stay hungry. Yeah, you might end up being starving if you do that. And so let's go all the way back for a few minutes about some basic things that I believe about financial security. I think this is something, by the way, you could share with your children, all the way up to somebody who's, 80, 90 years old listening today. There's a few things. There's two types of people in life. There are savers and spenders. There just are. And you need to know right now, which one are you? And how do you know that? You know that based on the amount of percentage of the money you make that you save. And I want to say something to you. If you can't save money when you're broke, when you're making very little, you will not save money when you're making more. That's a fallacy. People say, well, once I make more money, then I'll save. If you can find a way to save any amount of money right now, build the habit, the pattern of being a saver. And I'm talking about when I was making minimum wage as a busboy at the Whole Enchilada restaurant. Yep, that was my job. I was a busboy at the Whole Enchilada. The very next job I had basically after that, I worked in an orphanage for $5.60 an hour. That gives you an idea of how old I am because that was minimum wage then. And in both of those careers, as a young person at 17 and 18 years old, and then I got the job at the orphanage when I was 21 years old after college, I saved money. Now, I saved $18 a month into a forced savings program when I worked at the Whole Enchilada, and I saved $20 a month when I was working at McKinley Home for Boys. But what happened was, that was money that I never missed, and it was forced savings, and it created a behavioral pattern in me when I was poor and broke that I'm a saver. And so what I went without the Starbuckses of the world. I made my own coffee. I brought my own lunch to work. These things like very insignificant things, but what I was doing was ingraining in myself the ability and pattern of saving. So which are you right now? Are you a saver or are you a spender? Because you're one or the other. I've never been addicted to what kind of shoes I had, what kind of jeans I was wearing, the shirt I had. I was much more addicted to accumulating wealth. I got off, if you will, on showing somebody my mutual fund or my bank account statement much more than I did on what kind of car I drove. And I've always been that way. And I wasn't that way naturally. And I knew early on, I learned that I needed to establish this pattern of which one was I. And so ask yourself this. And by the way, you could be making a lot of money right now and you're not saving, or you could be making very little. It's an idea that you just begin this pattern of some sort of forced savings. Have it taken right out of your account, have it drafted out of your account. I don't care if it goes into I'm not going to tell you where it can go because I'm licensed or where it should go. And for the purposes of today's message, there are qualified people you can see in your life that can tell you what to do with that money. But are you a saver or a spender? A really scary thing is when two spenders are married to one another. I hope if you're married that one of you at least is a saver, and that if one of you is a spender, the saver has influence. But when two spenders are married, that is a formula for a lot of toxicity and a lot of stress. This idea that I keep hearing from so many people of get rid of all your cash, is insane, right? Oh, it'll keep you hungry. It'll put pressure on you. Really? No, what it'll do is put stress on you. If you can't be hungry when you're saving cash, at what point does that end? Or to all your life, do you just keep spending? Think logically about that. So you're supposed to get rid of all your money to stay hungry? Are you that unmotivated, that uninspired that you have to have no money or very little money to be hungry? There's not other higher purposes and callings that can keep you hungry in your business life? That's so stupid. But I keep hearing it. So stop that nonsense. Of course you should save money. Now there's a difference between saving and investing. There's a percentage of, now once you start to make money, you should have savings, which is just cash. And then you should have investments. And I'm not going to tell you where to invest your money. You'll make those decisions. Those are two totally different things. But I can tell you right now, like to this day, and I'm not exaggerating this, I add up like, what am I spending on my streaming services? What am I spending on Starbucks? What am I spending on DoorDash? What am I spending on Amazon? You should audit all of these things. Like, do you and by the way, if you're an addicted spender, shut out your Amazon account. Just shut it down. Right? But the amount of money people spend on frivolous things, silly things like their DoorDashes or their Uber deliveries or these things that you could just go to the grocery store and save money, or all your streaming services, plus you still have DirecTV, plus you got cable service. This may not seem like a $8, $12, $20. This adds up to places you could save money. And again, it's that habit, it's that feeling that I love saving as opposed to I love spending. This is so counterculture what I'm saying right now. It's crazy to me that it is counterculture. But I've always felt like I have this huge advantage financially in my life because like I'm into that, not the other stuff. And then once I had enough cash, then I became an investor. And you can decide where you put that money. For you, it could be real estate. It could be the market. It could be CDs. It could be treasuries. I'd have no idea. And I'm not suggesting any of those things. Let me be very clear. What I'm saying is that you should have savings and then investments, and they're two different things. But I cannot begin to tell you how many times in my life that because I had some cash saved, I took advantage of different situations. When if you don't have cash, you can't, or you don't have investments, you can't. Now, secondly, audit where you spend your money. Do you have a budget every single month? You should have a budget. And the first thing in that budget, for me, is my tithing. If you're a person of faith, it's what you give to God's kingdom. It's the seed you plant. And again, if you're broke, that may be $5 in the hat at church when it's passed. I don't know. But it's some seed you're planting. If you have 100 pennies in a dollar, the first pennies go there. The second pennies, even if it's a small amount, go to savings. You pay yourself first. Let me say it again. You pay yourself first. That's after you pay God if you believe in that. Okay? Next. Now you have your money that you live on. And then I would audit that. Where am I being wasteful and silly? And I got to tell you, it blows my mind. People say we're in a recession right now. I don't see that. I mean, maybe we are, but I got to tell you, I go to airports, they're full. They're packed with people, right? I see people using their credit cards at airport food and spending do you know how much it bothers me to buy a bottle of water to this day? I'm worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I still cringe when I buy a $5.60 bottle of water at an airport. Yet I watch people who have no money frivolously spend it there. Still, it's like, oh, gosh, I can't believe I'm doing that. I still scrutinize things like that. I still don't feel great when I overspend on Amazon. I don't. I just cut out 3 streaming services. I'm not exaggerating this. Last week. I'm like, I'm not using this. This is $8 a month. I've watched it 3 times in a year. Right? It's $100 a year. That's silly. I could put that $100 somewhere else. I could give it away. So begin to really micromanage and audit where you waste money, where you spend money. What type of gas do you put in your car? I'm not kidding. What kind of car do you have? What's your car payment? What could you do with that? If the car payment was half and it was not as nice a car, what could you do with that extra $300 or $400, $500? And when you look up the rule of 72 and how money compounds, what could that do for you? So look at that. The next thing is your debt. Why are you spending money to buy things that impress people who don't care that you can't afford? Who gives a crap what they think? Why would you do that? Why would you put it at 15% interest or 20% interest on stuff that no one gives a crap that you have? To impress people who don't care, who are hating on you behind the scenes anyway, when that could be money you're saving or investing in your life. So stop using debt on depreciating assets. And then even debt on appreciating assets. There's a threshold to which you should be doing that with, but you should be scrutinizing when you do it. And so I've always tried to get myself to be someone who, listen, I'm going to say it to you the way that I think it. If you're going to invest money and it's an appreciating asset and you want to use debt to get access to other people's money, and rates are still relatively low, by the way. People say, oh, interest rates are so much higher. I've been alive when interest rates were 18%. So interest rates are still relatively low. Money's cheap. If you can end up leveraging debt in order to buy an appreciating asset, you should consider it. But what a lot of people do is they go, well, I can get the money cheap. They don't really scrutinize. You make your money in most things on the buy. On the buy. So you still have to get the right price. And if you're saving in the stock market, you can dollar cost average in. If you don't know what dollar cost averaging is, you can look at that. You can look into that too. But the point that I'm making to you is, why not get focused on getting wealthy? You do not become wealthy by mistake. You become wealthy by your habits and your disciplines and your routines and your rituals. And so many people that are in the personal development space, you've really gotten good at your personal habits, your workout, your morning routine, your meditation, your gratitude, your cold plunge, your the food intake that you have. You have these great routines. What's your financial routine? What's your financial routine? Well, I'm going to get around to that. I'm only 21. I'll get around to that. Really? Well, I was getting around to it when I was 17. And just for the record, you will never get around to it. And typically someone who's a spender will attract another spender because they like shiny things. And they can both go out and impress a bunch of people with shiny things that nobody gives a crap about. Not any really good people. I'll be really honest with you. Some people do this, but I don't. I don't know what kind of watch you're wearing. I actually have a Rolex on right now. I didn't buy a Rolex until I was worth $100 million. I bought my first new car, brand new car, this year. And I'm worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Every single car I have ever bought was used. Every car. This year I bought a brand new Range Rover. First time in my life. Why would I buy something that depreciates the minute I roll it off the parking lot? How stupid. And then some of you finance this asset that's depreciating off the parking lot. What are you doing? What are you doing? So what's your financial habits, your financial routines, your financial disciplines? Consumer debt is horrible. Try to stay away from it. Even business debt, be careful with, or even debt on real estate. Doesn't mean it's right just because you got debt on it. And then there's just a certain threshold of debt that I don't want. I love cash. And so this notion that you should get rid of cash and cash is dropping in value because of inflation and all that stuff, there's some validity to that. And then it's also just wrong. Because when the economy changes, cash is king. And people that have cash. And by the way, if you're going to get really wealthy, it's a bunch of cash. But it could even be that you are able to get different services or products on discounts when you have cash at your disposal. There's a security and a confidence that comes with cash. I'm convinced that the reverse is true. This lie that if you get rid of all of your cash, you'll be hungry, just creates more stress. I can tell you that my accumulation of cash gave me strength, gave me confidence, gave me comfort, gave me the ability to walk away from a deal or a table because I didn't have to have it every single time. Cash is still king. And I'm telling you, I still leverage debt as well. But this notion that you should have all this debt and no cash breaks my heart, because that advice works great when the economy's going up. All these people who tell you they get rid of all their cash and they're leveraged to the hilt and they're really rich right now, wait till those values come down and the equity isn't there. Or when their loan renews, or their adjustable rate mortgage changes, or they just don't have any cash in life. And so I'm a big believer in cash. I'm a big believer in savings. I don't believe you need to make millions of dollars to become financially independent. You know, there's different levels of wealth. The first one is just to become financially independent. And financial independence just basically means that you saved enough money where that you don't have the necessity for your job. But ask yourself this right now. No matter how old you are, what if you went 6 months with no income? Can you live? Can you pay all your bills? Can you? If you had no income coming in, right? Do you have enough cash saved? Because by the way, some of those investments that you've leveraged, they can't be liquidated. So these people who have told you get rid of all of your cash, use debt to buy a bunch of assets, really? Well, what happens if that cash flow's not there? So ask yourself this right now. Can you go 6 months of paying all of your bills right now if you lost your job? How about 6 years? How about 60 years? So at some point in your life, you won't have a job at some age. And by the way, I just did an interview where life expectancies may be getting to 120, 130, 140, 150, potentially. How much cash do you need? How much revenue do you need to live long term so you don't have to work anymore? That's called getting financially independent. Wealth, that's a totally different thing. But some of you at least need to get to financial independence before you can get wealthy, or then stone-ass wealthy, right? And I could tell you that, people say, well, certain cars go up in value. Yeah, you're probably not buying those cars. Well, watches, Ed, Rolexes, they gone up the last 5 years. I don't know what they'll be worth in 15 or 20 years. Maybe they will be. But I'm not going to have a bunch of watches and call myself a rich person. Rich people don't just have watches. They have cash. They have assets. And so I say this to you today because I love you and I'm concerned about you. I'm concerned about our culture. I go to airports, they're packed. I don't think we're in a recession. I go to a mall, they're jam-packed. I was at a very expensive resort recently, packed with people. And next to it, there was a casino, packed with people. People are spending money like it's water. So I don't know that we're in a recession. Or people are just delusional right now and spending money they don't have. And I get all this past the pandemic. We want to have some experiences. I get all that. You just got to decide what makes you happy. What makes me happy is saving. What makes me happy is accumulating abundance and wealth so that I can give to the churches that I want to, or give to the charities that I want to, and take care of family when they need us. Listen, what's the likelihood of there not being a financial crisis in your family in the next 5 years? What's the likelihood of someone in your family not needing you for something? A medical emergency, a cash emergency, a tragedy of some sort, just life. What's the idea? What's the probability the next 5 years there's no chance of that? How about the next 10 years? And so what if you found yourself with no cash and just a bunch of debt and assets at that time? You can't help them. So this stuff is nuts, what's being taught out there. So the bottom line is this. What I wanted to encourage you today is just to become more aware financially. And this notion that I'm going to get my life together, myself together, my business together, my body together, my relationships together, and then my faith together. Once all of that's done, the money thing will just take care of itself. Or I'll eventually get around to the money thing. Or I'm so young, or whatever. That's just not how it works. You start it now. You start with a budget now. You start scrutinizing your money now. You start trying to become a saver now. And again, I want to be clear. I have leveraged debt on appreciating assets and made a lot of money doing that. But I didn't just do that. I also saved money because opportunities, and I'll be honest with you, I've made more money with my cash than I have with debt. Because when you've got cash in difficult times, you can get deals and steals and amazing opportunities because you can pull the trigger immediately when someone needs it. Immediately, rather than waiting for financing, waiting this other. So both are powerful. But man, my heart breaks when I see these very influential people constantly telling you this stuff. And by the way, I know many of them, and they also have cash. They also have cash. And so it's both. It's not one way or the other. I wish I could give you more specific financial advice. But today's a wake-up call. You want to have more confidence when you walk in a room? Have some money saved. You want to have more confidence and bliss and peace in your life? Have a pattern of being frugal. Have a pattern of being smart with your money. Listen to me. Show me a human being who is under control financially. Financially under control. They have disciplines. They don't give in to the temptations of immediate gratification. Show me a human being who shows me emotional control and discipline financially. And I'll show you a human being who's probably a pretty happy person. You show me someone who is out of control financially, but thinks they're going to get control over their emotions and their relationships in these other areas of their life. I'll show you a person living a delusion. How you are doing financially at every stage of your life is a reflection of how you are doing in almost every area of your life. And don't you dare say to me right now, hey, that sounds good, but I'm on minimum wage right now. I know. It's very, very difficult. But if you could begin to, if you're a person of faith, just a little bit to your tithing, if you could just do a little bit to some savings, if it's $5 a month, $5, and you go, Ed, I don't have it. You do. You do. There's $5 somewhere. If you're employed, you do. Ed, I've got this many kids, this much. I know. I'm telling you, there's $5 somewhere to save. You go, well, $5 isn't going to amount to anything. Yes, it is, because it's a habit. It's a belief. It's a pattern. It's a routine. It's a part of who you become. And I'm telling you right now, when you go from that minimum wage and now you're making $20 an hour and $50 an hour, and then you making $100,000 and $200,000, if the pattern all the way back in the beginning is to spend everything you get, you'll find a way to do it. You'll have a nicer car, a better apartment. You'll eat nicer restaurants. You'll upgrade the way you drink when you go out, and all of a sudden the money's gone. And then you go, well, no, now I'm an entrepreneur and I'm making $250. Or do you know how many people that are nodding right now that go, man, I have the same amount of money saved that when I was making $50,000 that when I made $100,000. I just went from having a Honda to a BMW, and I went from a 2-bedroom apartment to I rent my house. And then there's people listening to go, man, when I went from $100,000 to $250,000, I basically have the same life, except now I drive a Benz. I got a Benz. And my partner's got a nicer car too. And now I got, a decent watch and much nicer clothes. And I'm eating at Mastro's once in a while. And the truth is, there's no tangible difference in where I am financially. How many of you right now know somebody like that or are nodding? You go, and by the way, then I got to $400,000 or $500,000 a year. And now I bought a house. My business debt is up. My credit card bill seems to get much higher every single month because now I am not disciplined on Amazon. I've got 19 streaming services. I DoorDash my meals. I don't pay attention to what I pay for my airfare or other things I do. And all of a sudden, man, I just spend. And the truth is now I'm at $400,000 or $500,000 a year. And I'm not that much further ahead financially than I was when I was making $50,000 a year. And then what ends up happening is you go, it's not worth it to keep getting more and more income. And that's when people stall out. Most people stall out, even if they're really good, $250,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year. Why do they stall out? Because the truth is their financial life didn't change very much. They got a nicer car. They got a house now. They eat in nicer restaurants. They've got nicer clothes on their body. But the truth of the matter is they're really not that much further ahead financially than when they were making minimum wage or they're making $50,000 a year. Because the habits weren't ingrained back then. I promise you that I'm right now, and I promise you most of your friends that you think are rich, that make $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 a year, they are quietly going, he's completely right about this right now. He's 100% right. The truth is most people can't go 6 months without their paycheck, and almost nobody can go 6 years. And that's sad because it could be different if their habits, their beliefs, and their patterns were different. And so today was just simply a wake-up call to create more financial peace in your life, even on a limited budget. And if you don't have a limited budget, this is a huge wake-up call for you to begin to become a saver and have a conversation with whoever you're in a relationship with about your spending and saving. Begin to scrutinize it. Begin to break it down. Begin to have a real budget. Begin to have some outcomes and goals for how much you want to save as a percentage of your money, and then let the professionals you deal with in your life or your own research, by the way, determine where those monies should go. That's not the topic of today, and I'm licensed, so I can't go through any of that with you. But I can talk to you about basic blocking and tackling as a human being of creating financial peace in your life. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Listen, you all know I'm a big fan of therapy. In fact, people ask me all the time, what do all the guests that have been on your show have in common? Because they're all these different diverse careers. And I can't say all of them have done this, but the vast majority of them has gotten some type of help in their life through therapy. And so whether you've got a major problem you're working on right now that you need to get through, whether it's an emotional issue or what have you, therapy helps. Or maybe you just want to talk out loud about stuff you're not getting clarity on or focus. BetterHelp, which is H-E-L-P, is the place to go. What I love about BetterHelp is it can be done online, it's affordable, and they'll match you with a licensed therapist immediately. If you don't vibe with your therapist, you can switch out and get a different one at any time that you want to. So become your own soulmate. Whether you're looking for one or not, visit betterhelp.com/edshow today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/edshow. Hey guys, I'm so excited to tell you this right now. Here's the deal. There's a chance now for you to be on this show with me, and I'm going to do it every single month. Let me tell you how you qualify to get on the show. Every single day on my social media, I run something called a 2-minute drill. So if that's Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, if you follow me on those platforms, when I make a post within the first 2 minutes, so have your notifications turned on, If you just make a comment on my post, every day we take everybody who's made a comment and we pick a winner every single day. And that person is going to have an opportunity to be on this show with me and get coached. So if you're interested, follow me on social media. When I make a post, make a comment, and eventually, hopefully you can get selected to win. We're picking somebody every single day, and I'll have those folks on the program. If you want to get a text reminder about my post or this program, 714-916-9144. You can text me at that number and you'll get daily reminders. I would love to have you on this show. Follow me on social media and engage in the 2-minute drill. Max out. Today, we're going to talk about money. So many have been emailing and DMing the show saying, would you please, Ed, discuss budgeting and finances a little bit more, saving, retirement, and debt. So that's what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about savings, retirement, and debt. And it's something I'm very concerned about. It's very much on my heart. Before I get into some of the things I'm going to cover, let me just say, I'm not coming to you on some soapbox, some guru or expert on a high horse, thinking I have everything figured out or that I'm perfect. I'm actually today coming to you. You're listening to somebody who understands. I've had cars repossessed, unfortunately. I know what it's like to be behind on your credit cards and have them taken from you. I know what it's like to have a house foreclosed on. I know what it's like to really consider bankruptcy. I've had my power turned off. I've had my mobile phone turned off before. This is not stuff I'm proud of. I've had the water turned off. Man, you don't want that to happen. And most of that stuff was self-inflicted for mistakes that I made. And so I don't want you to make those mistakes. And I see so much terrible advice on podcasts from these gurus, social media, the different examples that are held out there about what wealth looks like and what being rich looks like and what the right things are to do financially. And so we're going to talk about some of those mistakes I've made and that I see being made in the world today. And it pains me. Let me give you some statistics first. If you make $80,000 a year, do you know about how much money you have to have saved in order to retire just at the same standard of living? And when I say same standard of living, I'm not talking about now you're retired, you get to take extravagant vacations or anything like that. I mean, just to live the same as you live right now with your job. If you make $80,000 a year, how much money do you think you have to have saved? Well, the data tells us you need about $2 million saved after taxes. So what that means is, a lot of you say, well, I've got money in my 401k. You do understand, you haven't paid your taxes yet when that money comes out of that 401k or that IRA. So after taxes, you need about $2 million saved if you make $80,000 a year to provide the same standard of living. How do we know that? Well, at a $2 million amount of money, 4% interest on that would spit off about $80,000 a year. You could live at about the same standard of living that you currently live at now. Are you on pace to do that? Because let me tell you what the average American, the median American, has saved in the median. $5,000. $5,000 is the median. There's a difference between the median and the average. The median is the person in the middle. The average is when you take all of the affluent people, wealthy people, and all the people that have nothing. The average savings is about $100,000 currently. The median's $5,000. That's a problem because when you look at debt, the average American has $114,000 of consumer debt. $114,000. That doesn't count their home loan. That's college loans, car loans, credit card debt. Average person carries about $10,000 on a credit card. Average interest rate about 15%. Can you see there's a problem? We are in a consumer culture. We're in a culture that tells us to spend, spend, spend to keep up with people. We've also got a lot of influencers out there telling you to get rid of all of your money, that you should just, every dollar you get, you should get rid of it, spend it somehow, or invest it, and stay broke so you stay hungry. Let me say something to you about that first of all. That's terrible advice. This idea that the only way you can stay driven and hungry is to remain broke or to get rid of all of your money is insane. If your motivation level is so low that you need to deplete all of your cash in order to stay hungry and motivated, you don't need to check your bank account. You need to check your actual inspiration level. That's insane. And so the other thing that's in our culture today, and then I'm going to give you some of the keys, is that we're trying to keep up with the Joneses. We're trying to impress people by buying really expensive things. Let me say something to you. I've been very fortunate. I've had, like I said, you're listening to somebody today who's had their car repossessed, home foreclosed on, power turned off, water turned off. None of those are things that I'm very proud of, okay? But I've also been blessed to become very wealthy. I've been blessed to, I've driven every car you could possibly ever have. I've owned them all, basically most all of them. I've had 6 different jets, including a Global Express that I bought from Oracle. I own my own island, right? I've owned multiple oceanfront homes. My studio right now is in one of them. I've owned some of the homes in the nicest neighborhoods in the world. I've had, all the material things you could possibly want. And let me tell you something, they're really nice to have, but you can't enjoy them if you're broke. Living in a really nice house that you can't afford and that you're sweating the payment on all the time is no way to live. And trying to keep up with people to impress people who don't care by buying stuff you don't need is insane. And I see it happening. And so striving to impress people with material things, let me just say this to you up front, doesn't work. It doesn't impress them. And for the few that it does impress, those are the wrong types of people. You want people to be impressed with the content of your character, with the way you live your life, the way you treat your family and other people. And if to get them to be impressed by you, you need a particular purse or a particular jacket or pair of shoes, those are people whose approval you don't want anyway. Yet we seek it, don't we, to keep up with people. We're in a consumer culture, which is why consumer debt is so high relative to savings. And so, and by the way, if you're a young person listening, you go, well, I don't care about retirement. That's 30, 40 years away. First off, it's going to happen faster than you think. But let me ask you this. Do you want to be in control of your life? Do you want to be able to call the shots and not have the world dictate shots to you? Do you want to be able to help your parents or your siblings or your friends at any time you want to? Do you want to be able to take advantage of opportunities when they come along and be able to write a check at any time you want to buy something on discount that's an asset as opposed to a liability? So at any age, you should be saving money. I figured this out. By the time I was about 23, I had made some money. And like I said, I had a house foreclosed, a car repoed, and I started to change the way I viewed things. I found out most of these people I was impressing with these cars that I had, they weren't around once I didn't have them. They weren't impressed with me. They were impressed with the car. And you know the other thing about nice stuff? It's out of style in like 2 or 3 years anyway. Right? Like the truth is, even a nice house you have, stylistically in 10 or 12 years, it's dated. It just is. What I started to get addicted to was watching my savings account grow, watching my investments grow, watching my assets grow. I got more fired up every month saving money, stacking paper, than I did with what I was buying to impress people. And then I'm going to give you the keys in a minute. I'm 52 years old. I'm worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I've made hundreds of millions of dollars. And I've only bought 2 new cars in my entire life. Because buying a new car is one of the dumbest things you could do. You should be either leasing your cars or buying them used. Let someone else pay all that depreciation. You let that thing drive off the car lot. Let them drive it for a year or two, and then you buy that thing at a discount. It's still going to drop after you buy it, but not at the same rate as the dummy who buys the new car. So let's go through a few things here that can help you. Number one, by the way, that stat I gave you earlier, if you make $80,000 a year, you need $2 million. That's if you're retiring today. If you make $80,000 a year and you're retiring 30 years from now, if you factor in inflation, you'll need $5 million. So you have to start to ask yourself, are you on pace? Are you doing the things that will get you wealthy? And that's where I want to begin. The first thing you have to do when it comes to money is get some goals and some outcomes. And this is for everybody who makes minimum wage, all the way up to those of you that are making 6 or 7 and even 8 figures. You need to have financial outcomes, a financial focus. If you don't invest or save money when you're making very little, you will not invest or save money when you're making a lot. That's one of the great fallacies and lies about money, is that people think, well, I'm on this limited amount of income, so once I make more, I'll save more. That's not what I see happen. I see someone making $40,000 a year, living paycheck to paycheck, and then when they're making $70,000, now instead of driving a Honda, maybe they got a Lexus. Instead of having a so-so apartment, they got a nice apartment. And then when they go from $70,000 to $100,000, then they upgrade from the Lexus to the Mercedes, and they buy a house. And they deplete their savings buying a house. And then when they go from 100, if they do, to 150,000, they get rid of that house, they get a more expensive house, and then they got a second car and a second house. And they never get around to really accumulating any savings. In other words, they upgrade their lifestyle as they make more money. Smart people don't change their lifestyle for a long, long time when they begin to make more money. And they begin to build the habits and disciplines of a wealthy person when they're a broke person. I was saving money. See, here's how old I am. I was making minimum wage working McKinley Home for Boys, working at an orphanage that I worked at. And I was making minimum wage, which back then was $8 an hour. And I was still finding a way to save $50 a month in a savings, in a forced savings. Because I wasn't going to Starbucks. I didn't have cable TV. I eliminated basic things because I wanted to build it. And I started to get excited. Wow, I've got $300 saved. I've got $1,500 saved. I've got $6,000 saved. As my friends were buying expensive cars. In fact, there's a great story I tell often that even when I started to make money, I wanted to buy a Mercedes. I bought a fake one. I bought a kit car. I bought a Chrysler LeBaron with a Mercedes body on it because I wanted to look like I was driving a Mercedes, but I didn't want to spend the money. That's a true story, by the way. I had a kit car. It was a LeBaron with a Mercedes body on it because I was so addicted to saving and accumulating money. So first things first, let me give you some keys. Number one is you need to decide what your outcomes are and what your goals are financially. Do you want to have financial freedom and independence? Right? That's one level of wealth. Or do you want to be like stone-ass wealthy? Those are two totally different things. And for a lot of people, the answer is, I just like some financial peace and independence. I don't have to have Lamborghinis and jets and islands and all these other things, but I sure would like to live financially peacefully. I'd like to someday not have to work. I'd like to pay off my house. I'd like to have a bunch of money saved. Whatever that is for you, I want some element. I don't want debt. The scriptures tell us, owe no man nothing. I'd like some financial peace in my life. And the truth is, I think most people see the wealthy thing on Instagram all the time and think that's what they want. But maybe it's not what you want. Maybe the truth is you just like more time. If you could save enough money to pay all your bills and have your house taken care of and some basic stuff, maybe you'd like to take more time off. And if you're one of those people who say, money's not that big of a deal to me, I get that. And the truth of the matter is that's how I started out. It was not that big of a deal to me. But I knew the lack of money. Man, I knew that was a real big deal. I didn't want to be broke. I don't want to be stressed. I did not want to be in a position in my life where I couldn't help my family if I needed to. And so my first goals were not to be super wealthy. They were to get financially independent. And the first step in doing that is you need to know your financial independence number, your FIN number. Your FIN number is the amount of money you need saved so that living off the interest on that money, you no longer need to work anymore. The next thing is this. You got to stop going into debt. You got to stop spending money to impress people. You got to stop it. You got to stop buying meals on credit. Stay out of malls, frankly. I've been to a mall maybe 5 times in 15 years. You know what? Monitor and really be smart about your Amazon account. Don't have people shipping you stuff you don't need to your house. Take a look at all your subscriptions. Do you need all of them? Do you need every single one of those subscriptions? Or could you eliminate some of those things if you're on a budget and start to put that money into savings? The next thing is to understand the distinction between 3 separate things. You need an emergency fund set up. An emergency fund is 3 to 6 months of your current expenses accessible at any given time. You need that money set aside. That's in case of a job loss, car breaks down, somebody needs some help, emergency. Quite frankly, life's just going to happen. So the first things first is you need 3 to 6 months of money set aside in an emergency fund. You should start to make that your goal and your ambition and start chipping away at doing that. If you're someone making a lot of money right now, carve that amount out and put it to the side. The second thing that you need to do is you need to have savings. Savings is just money that you're accumulating that in case you need it, it's there for a rainy day. You should have some savings. Anybody who tells you shouldn't is wrong. Okay, you should have some measure of savings. And then the third thing is investing. That's money you're going to take that has some risk to it that you're going to try to get rates of return on. And I'm not going to tell you where to put that money today, but I can tell you that you need an emergency fund, savings, and then investments. The only advice I'll give you on saving money, because I'm licensed, I can't recommend particular investments. What I will say to you is this. If you can't explain it to me, you shouldn't be putting your money in it. If you can't understand it and explain it back to me, it's not the place for you to be putting your money yet. And if you don't have a financial professional in your life who can explain things to you in a basic way so that you can understand them, you have to ask yourself why they're confusing you. You have to ask yourself that, right? Sometimes people like to make things seem very sophisticated and complex so that you think you need them and that maybe potentially you make a bad decision. You ought to be able to explain to me why your money's in there and how it works and what it's doing. And anybody can do it. Even somebody who doesn't want to know a lot about financial education, doesn't matter. You should be able to do that. Okay, so that's number one. The next thing is, as soon as you can afford it, make sure you have a competent tax person and CPA in your life. If you're someone making a lot of money, you really need a good tax person in your life, a professional, competent tax or CPA, and you probably ought to be working with somebody who can help you with your money as well. Make sure you have a financial game plan and direct it, and make sure you're running a budget. Now, in my budget recommendations, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to take the first 30% of your money, if you can afford it, 30% of your money, and give it to your tithing and to pay yourself first. If you can't do 30%, if it's down to even 10%, carve something out that you're going to give away and carve something out because of the law of reciprocity and carve something out that you pay yourself first every month. Take it off the top. Don't pay yourself last because you're never going to get paid. If you make $3,000 a month, take $50 and pay yourself first, and now you make $29.50 a month. You say, Ed, that sounds good. You're a rich guy. Listen, I spend every single dollar I do every month. I understand it. I've lived on minimum wage. And I'm telling you that even when I lived on minimum wage, I found a way to pay myself first. You need to get in control of your life. And the way you get in control of your life is you first control your spending. You control your budgeting. You control your financial discipline. You begin to make this a massive priority in your life, that you're going to become somebody who is financially in control. Because if you start the habits of being financially in control, eventually you will be in control and you will call the shots in your life. So please budget and begin to save your money, and don't invest in something you can't. Get clear on what you want. And if you're younger, start saving money now. You'll build the habits of trust me, I'm 52 years old. I started doing this in my early 20s, and I really believe that's why I'm wealthy. Stay with me on this. There's a bunch of people you see on social media that won't be rich someday, that look rich right now. I have more friends in my life, listen to me, those of you that are making a little bit of money, that used to be rich than that currently are. I've watched them go seasons of 5 or 8 or 10 years where they were balling. They were making real money. They were driving the nice car, the nice vacation. They bought this or that. And then bam, things changed. They got caught with their pants down financially. They had no money saved, no cash, debt up to their eyeballs. You're not. And so I have more friends that used to be rich than currently are because they weren't in control of themselves. They didn't have delayed gratification. They had no financial discipline, no budget, no game plan, no goals, no outcome. Now, when it comes to your investments, let me just say this to you. There's lots of places to save money. I can't recommend it. And I know kind of the cool thing right now, and I've made a lot of money in real estate. That's a great place. Start flipping houses. That's one of the real vogue things. That's great. And maybe that is what you should be doing. But you're one bad flip away from being broke too, which is why you still need cash saved. How about having a plan in your life where if it goes bad, you're still okay? And I'm not talking about, I know maybe you listen to that, you go, well, Ed, that's just a luxury I don't have. Of course you do. You can save some money. There are ways to do it. And if you're not making enough money, then you need to get a second job. Work a second job. I've had multiple jobs at any given time, many times. When I was an entrepreneur, many times I had to go back and get a night job to support my entrepreneurial hustle. But being an entrepreneur is not easy. Being an entrepreneur is difficult. You entrepreneurs listen to this, and maybe you're going behind. Maybe you need to get a job 2 days a week or stocking shelves at night. I stocked shelves at a grocery store for 2 years while I was building my business because my business wasn't keeping my family afloat, and I still had to save money. So some of you that are entrepreneurs, maybe it's maybe it's a second job. Some of you that have a full-time job, maybe it's starting a second business. Maybe you need a second income stream. The truth is that in this day and age, with how crazy things cost and how out of control taxes are, you may need secondary income. So if you have a job, maybe it's starting a side hustle on the side or a second job. If you're an entrepreneur, maybe it's having a second job on the side that's part-time to support your business. It's okay to work a lot. It's okay to have financial discipline. It's okay to go through a season of your life where you sacrifice lots of things, including time, in order to get wealthy. But the hardest thing that I see, the most heartbreaking thing, are those people doing the grind, making the sacrifice, doing all the things to make money, and then they have no game plan, no financial discipline, and they watch all these idiots on Instagram or social media go, man, I got to have the car. I got to have the house. I got to have the nightclub. I got to have the steak. Man, sometimes even me, when I show the things I have, I've got, I'm lucky now. In this video, I got a stupid expensive watch on, right? I didn't start buying expensive watches or cars until I could write checks for them, and not just write checks for them, not sweat the check, where it didn't make a dent in my savings. Can you imagine saving up $200,000 and dropping $130,000 on a stupid watch? Now you got 70 grand. I didn't start writing checks for watches like that till I had millions of dollars saved. And sometimes I think that's a bad example, because the truth of the matter is this watch is great. And you know what? I barely ever look at it. And I got a couple other ones. They're stupid. I've had a lot of nice cars. And you know what? The minute you drive by somebody, they're not impressed anymore. And if I am impressing them, it's probably the wrong person. That's not to say part of getting wealthy isn't to have nice stuff. I get that. I like nice stuff. I've become accustomed to it. But I didn't start partaking in it until I had earned it. And I had earned it with the work I did and all of the savings and investing I had done. And then if it's 1% of my money, okay, who cares? That's play money. But if it's 20, 30, 40% of your cash and you're spending it on stupid stuff like cars and clothes and steaks and wine, that's dumb, right? And trust me, I've had every car you could possibly almost think of. Lambos, Ferraris, Mercedes, Rolls-Royce, whatever. I've had 6 jets. Like I said, the last jet I bought from Oracle, a Global Express jet. I've had all those things. They're amazing. They're not amazing if you have debt on them. They're not. They're not amazing if you have to worry about paying for them. They're not amazing if they're a major chunk of your cash. They're not. Remember that. The average American has $100,000 in consumer debt and $5,000 of savings. The average American needs $2 million to retire, and they got $5,000. Is that sad or what? And so we need to budget. We need to save money. Why does saving money matter, Ed? It gives you control. And whether we like it or not in this lifetime, we need to be able to protect our families and protect ourselves and make decisions. As an entrepreneur, one of the reasons you need to have financial discipline is that lack of financial discipline will cause you to make bad decisions as a business person. You'll make decisions based on money or pressure because you haven't saved money. As a friend, let me say this to you. You just remember this. Your lack of financial discipline as an entrepreneur will eventually affect your business. It'll eventually affect your business. What's the number one mistake I see entrepreneurs do? They don't pay their taxes. They get behind on taxes. They say, wow, I made $30,000 last month. No, you didn't. You made $30,000 if you're a 1099, you're self-employed, you're 1099, real estate agent, insurance agent, business owner. You made $30,000 last month before taxes. You probably made more like $18,000, but you're living like you made 30. Those of you that are employees that have a job, it's your lack of discipline saving money. It's your lack of having a game plan. It's running up debt that you don't need. And again, I'm not trying to be insensitive to anybody who doesn't have, a lot of income coming in. I've lived that way. I lived in a single parent. I lived in a family where my mother stayed home and raised our family, the most important job on the planet. And we had one income, which was my dad's. And I know what that can look like. I remember one time when my dad lost his job and how absolutely destroyed our family was and worried about what was going to come when my dad was unemployed for a while. And thank God my dad had an emergency fund and we had money to live off for those months where he was finding work. And so this stuff matters. It has ramifications. Begin to educate yourself. Evaluate what you drive if you're on a budget. Do you need to drive that car? Or could you get something less expensive, reduce the payment, or actually cash something out and do something with that savings? Evaluate what you subscribe to, your subscriptions. Get serious and get focused. And stop caring what people think about what your stuff is. I promise you, nobody cares that matters. Nobody does. And I want to say this to you about real estate. A lot of you ask me about real estate. I think that's a great place. I do not believe it's the only place, though. And so begin to educate yourself about the different places you could put money. But the most important thing is to begin to build the habits so that you become long-term financially independent and maybe stone-ass wealthy. And for those of you that are making money, please don't be one of these people that was rich just for a little while or successful just for a little while. That you had this tremendous blessing of making some money, maybe more than you've ever made for a little window of time, and you blew it on stuff, and you didn't save and accumulate and invest. Don't go into debt that you don't need to. Some debt is good debt. We all know this. Debt on liabilities is terrible. Debt on cars, debt on clothes, debt on food, debt on stuff you don't need. That's terrible. Debt on assets, everyone says, well, that's great. Well, maybe. I mean, sometimes it's great. You still got to buy the right property at the right price. It's still got to be something you can afford and handle, right? Just because it's debt on an asset doesn't make it good debt. It just means it's definitely not stupid, right? I've had so many friends that were doing pretty well for a while, and now they're not. And they're not because their lack of savings created pressure in the bad times. And when the bad times came, because they were under pressure unnecessarily, they should have had money saved and invested. But because they didn't, they made bad decisions under pressure. And ultimately, those decisions were made because of financial pressure, and that financial pressure ruined their businesses. Had they just saved money in the good times, they could have rode out the bad times. And so this is the same whether you have a business or a family. You've got to plan for winter. Listen to me. Winter comes in everyone's life. There's 4 seasons for a reason. There's summer, spring, winter, and fall. And that metaphorically is true in our lives. You're going to have a spring in your life probably at some point where you've got some financial opportunities, and it's going to be sunny out in the summer. And then there's going to be a time where you start to have anxiety and things begin to change. The leaves of your life begin to change, and you can feel it maybe not the way you want it to, which is fall. And ultimately, there's going to be a winter. In all of our lives, there's a financial winter. There's a winter where we lose our job, or our car breaks down, or there's a disaster, or a family need, or our income in our business drops, or we just have massive expenses in a short window of time that we have to make. So that winter is going to come. Please prepare for winter. Whether you don't make a lot of money or you do make a lot of money, I can tell you this: if you begin to develop the habits of budgeting and have an emergency fund and saving money and staying out of stupid debt, right, and investing after your savings, wherever you believe that that's appropriate. When you have those habits and you make good choices and you begin to live in some financial harmony and peace consistent with your values, that when winter comes, you can ride it out. I've had probably 4 or 5 winters since my mid-20s, and I've been able to ride them out. And if I can be really candid with you, because I had saved a lot of cash, I was able to make a lot of money during other people's winters when they had to sell their house or their business or their asset. I could buy them at a discount because I had cash or I had investments. I want to talk some business stuff with you real quick. What people don't know, unless they're real boxing fans, is you've also kind of manned up in the business side of boxing too. In other words, you took your career into your own hands at a pretty good sacrifice. And so you had a promoter, we don't need to name him, but you had a promoter that you didn't feel like you had a fair agreement with, or they wanted you to re-sign for the same unfair agreement. Is that fair to say?
Listen, we had a promoter who I worked with ever since I turned pro back in 2006. I was with them for 9 years of my career. I was champion 2 times under their banner. Contract came up. They believed that contract had an extension that they could apply. I disputed that extension. The details, I can go into details if you'd like, if you got time, but short story.
Well, it took a long time.
2.5 years.
So you were not in the ring.
I was not in the ring for 2.5 years.
On the principle of making a fair agreement for yourself. Basically, the way I view it, and I'll jump in, you became an entrepreneur. Almost like an employee before you bet on yourself.
Yeah, I was betting on myself.
Yeah.
I believed in myself. I believed in the principles. I knew that what the promotional company wanted to do was wrong. They were offering me a fight in exchange for an extension to the contract, which I didn't agree on. I actually offered to renegotiate. They said no, there already is an extension on the contract. So then my question was, if there already is an extension, why are you asking me to sign another extension? It just makes no sense. They had the title that I had to be vacated. They stripped me from my title due to the inactivity. So the company, because they were not fighting me, they didn't fight. They didn't give me a fight. I ended up losing my title for inactivity, and I lost 2.5 years of my career. When we finally came out of that whole mess, I was in a much better place. Now I'm in complete control. I started aligning myself with some people in the sport that were being supportive, that were helping. Network, advisors, promoters, they wanted to work with me. So we started, creating this alliance, helping me get my fights, fight by fight, working together, but no commitment with contracts. On one fight deal, fight by fight. No long-term contract unless it made something life-changing for me. But still, hasn't happened.
You're one of the very few boxers ever to do what you've done. Basically became an entrepreneur, basically bet on himself. He probably wouldn't say it, but I think it cost you about 7 figures to probably do it.
It did.
Right?
It did.
I mean, it was a tremendous sacrifice to stand on that principle.
It cost me more than that if you consider the money that I basically didn't earn.
Didn't make boxing. Several $1 million. Then.
So it was several $1 million that I pretty much lost. Moments that were scary were moments where I still had mortgage, I still had some bills, and some of my tenants were late, and I gotta make those mortgage payments. And in all honesty, there was moments where I was broke. As far as cash, liquid cash, I didn't have it. I had to wait for another installment from this, business, or from this sponsorship, or from my rentals or whatever. Moments where I didn't have more than $300 in my account.
That's amazing to me. Wow.
Honestly, no bullshit, no lies. moments where I didn't have no more than $300 in my account.
My gosh.
And what I do, I go buy groceries instead of making that bill.
Wow.
Instead of paying that mortgage or paying that whatever it
So
was.
a world champion is in that situation on the principle of it.
On the principle.
Wow.
And, you know, things.
They were betting on that, weren't they? They were betting you'd cave in.
The technique or strategy that I think they had was exactly that. That I would cave in, that I would fold and come back and take whatever they offered.
Yeah. Give some people money advice. Like I know, you know, with all my athletes, I always ask them, you know, how are you doing financially? And, and you don't have to get into your personal finance, but you're doing very well now.
Yes.
And you're big on not being in debt and saving money.
Yes.
Do you mind telling them like how much being rich compared to looking rich is important to you? You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of guys want to look rich.
Yes.
You want to be rich, right? And so, and you talk, if you don't mind, like what you've done
share,
for your kids,
Look,
college stuff, all that.
I've seen a lot of fighters pretend like they're rich.
A lot of people.
You know.
Yep.
A lot of people, but
it's more in boxing.
I see it in boxing more.
Yeah.
You know, they make $100,000 and go buy a $80,000 Mercedes.
Yeah. Right.
It makes no sense to me.
Right.
But not many people think like me. Not many people have the experience that I have. I've seen a lot of fighters. I've seen a lot of cases. My dad has given me a lot of advice, even though he didn't have the education, but he always, you know, would advise me and tell me to make sure I do well with my money, I save my money, put it away in things that can help me in the future for my retirement, think about the future, think about the kids, that kind of stuff. So when I started making some money, $200,000 fights, $300,000 purses, first thing I started doing is started buying some houses, some real estate, rental income, some flips, stuff like that. That let me get through the 2.5 year, you know, layoff. I was able to make some money on the side like that. Now I'm fortunate to make better money than ever. I'm doing very well, making more money than I ever imagined I was making at this, you know, age. Paid off everything that I have.
Awesome.
I have several rental properties, income. Some they were paid for, some had mortgages, and just being paid by the rents. I'm not making money off them, but my money's safe. I'm not getting rich off of the $1,000 a month income, but my money's safe there. You know, you have $400,000 in that property, you have another $400,000 there. So after making good money now, I paid everything off. This last fight, I paid everything off.
Awesome.
Paid all the cars off, paid all the credit card. I honestly don't even use credit cards, but little $10,000 credit card, whatever. You know, paid that off, paid my houses. But even before that, I secured my kids' college accounts. I have college accounts for them. So that's secured. My retirement, I have another account set up for retirement.
I love this.
I'm completely free and clear, and basically, you know, financial.
It's a great feeling, isn't it? It's a great feeling.
I was so happy after this last fight, because I knew exactly what I was going to do.
Yeah, you knew what you were going to do.
So after the last fight, we had my first guaranteed check right away. That comes from the network. We have a check, solid. 2 weeks later, I get the other check. Another week, another check. And these are all large checks, you know, 7-figure checks. Like, so I put one aside for taxes.
You better do that.
Put one aside for taxes.
That's another lesson.
I knew that's not mine. That's taxes. But I still have the other two. Pay everything off, take care, and I still have all this, you know, deposit.
It's the best feeling in the world. People get advice going different ways. I'm just telling you, just so you all know, this is how rich people think. It's how I think. It's how rich people think. Rich people do not love tons of debt. I don't care. You want some debt on some of your real estate? That's okay if it's going to appreciate. But you pay off your cars, you pay off your stuff, you fund the college stuff, and you get excited about saving money. Like your face lit up about saving the money, not spending the money. Other dudes sit in that seat, their face gets excited about spending the money.
What's the next purchase?
Right. What am I going to buy?
What am I going to buy? And it's okay to treat yourself.
Of course.
But you know, at your means, you know where you stand, what you can afford. I mean, just because you made, like I said, $100,000 in one exchange or transaction doesn't mean you should buy an $80,000, $100,000 Mercedes.
Thank you.
It's not. It doesn't work like that. You know.
But most people do that.
Most people do that. You know, and when it comes to boxing, people hear, oh, he made $1 million in a fight, and think it's a lot of money. It's not. Let me tell you how this works. $1 million for a fight. That's what's contracted. That's what's the guarantee. You have to pay your manager and your trainer and your expenses, your training camp, all that.
What is that roughly?
Let me tell you. On average, a manager charges about 30%. A trainer charges about 10%. So right away, that's 40%. Your camp could be anywhere from, you know, $30,000, $50,000 for training camp,
Okay.
your conditioning coach, your cook, all that. Add another 10%. So half of your paycheck goes to expenses right away.
Okay.
So from the $1 million, you're down to $500,000. That $500,000, you got to pay your taxes. Easy numbers, say 30%. Easy numbers. You know, that's $150,000 that you have to pay. And that's with good CPA and good write-offs.
Yeah.
So now you're down to $350,000.
Yeah.
$350,000 from $1 million.
Wow.
You buy yourself a house that's $300,000.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Now what do you have?
Yep.
You got nothing.
Yes.
But most people don't see that, and they go ahead and spend all the money right away. Maybe they don't have the people around them telling them what to do. They've never had the education or the ability to just handle that kind of money. First time getting that kind of money, they go crazy.
Yes.
So I was fortunate enough to listen to my dad.
Thank God.
Just hear him out. Didn't do those purchases. I'd never bought anything that I didn't know for a fact I could afford it.
Yeah.
I was champion, and I saved my money from 2 fights to finally buy a newer home.
Yeah.
Before I was champion, I saved money from 2 fights on HBO appearances. I was making $100,000 in each fight. I saved my money. I bought 1 house. Then after the next fight, I bought a Challenger, a car. That was like my thing, my baby.
Okay.
I still have.
Awesome.
But it's not buying, you know,
Extravagant stuff.
You know, $100,000 Mercedes. Not yet.
Yeah.
I bought another house after that. Bought another house. You know, I'm buying stuff that I know is going to help in the future.
Yes.
It really helped during the years that I was off.
Thank God.
Those houses, those rentals helped.
Yep.
Those
Yep.
flips helped.
Yeah. I love how you think.
You know, it was a different process to make it through those 2.5 years.
Yep.
When you're not making, you know, $500,000 a fight, you're not making $300,000 a fight.
Yep.
What do? You're living, you know, on a budget and gotta
and you were spending
watch what you're spending. You still have to spend money, but you have to do it a certain way.
Yep. And by the way, that happens with everybody, though. Even in every business, there's seasons where entrepreneurs are doing really well, and then they're not. And it's amazing to me when guys don't think they're going to go through a 2-year drought.
Yeah.
And you're going to go through a 2-year drought if you're a boxer, if you're a businessman, or business person rather. You got to save money.
You got to prepare yourself for that.
The reason I wanted you on is you're tactic heavy. Like, you're known for tactical stuff. So everybody, the rest of this interview, we're going to get real granular on some different things. We're also going to talk about how to build a life too, because Candy woke up at one point at 40 and had a bunch of money, but didn't have a bunch of life. And so you can have a bunch of money and not be rich. You can not live richly. But one of the things you just said, I want to acknowledge, I still am cheap and struggle with what you just said, that I would be wealthier and I would have been happier. And I've had a lot of happiness and I built a lot of wealth. I'm you know, done okay on that stuff. However, I would have more of it had I been willing to evaluate what you just said. What am I doing that I could actually replace myself and pay somebody for? But I was such a control freak and also cheap from time to time as an entrepreneur that I didn't invest in ahead of myself to scale and give myself a life. So I want to acknowledge that. The other thing that's happening right now is, I think by every measurement, we're in a recession right now. I think we're in one. Now, to the depth of it, the length of it, I'm not capable of forecasting that yet. Maybe I'll never be capable of doing that. If we could forecast that, no one would lose money in recessions, right? But you have like 6 things that you can recession-proof your life and your business with. You don't have to share all 6. But if someone's listening to this right now and they're like, I think we're in a recession, what are some recession-proof strategies?
Well, first I want to say that when you hear that word, it invokes a lot of fear in people. And it's specifically designed to do that, right? Because that's what people click on. That's what news topics are all about. Yeah. But you have to remember the most important part. Nothing that happens in our country's economy will ever be more important than what happens in your own personal economy. And if you take the steps to really recession-proof your life and you do really well in the good times so that you can set yourself up to do well in the bad times too. Like, and what does that mean? It's all the non-sexy stuff, like live within your means. Like for years within my business, I wasn't making massive amounts of money, but I was living beneath my means. I was saving and investing money into real estate starting at 20 years old. So rather than going and buying all the fancy things that most people do, I was looking at this long game. How do I actually do this in 20 years and be able to retire and quit and be able to do whatever I want? So the first thing is that always remember that whatever you do is far more important and that there's always opportunity. That's why when I did the research for the book, since 2020, there has been more billionaires made than any other time in history. Because when one area or industry goes bad, there's so much opportunity. So it's always keeping that in mind. Because if you're focused on the reality of, the economic downturn, and that's all you focus on, then you're going to miss the opportunity that's right in front of us.
Yeah, you're so right. The data tells us not only are more billionaires been created since 2020, but more millionaires are created during recessions than any other time, whatever even recession means. And I think you make a really good point about that. This live below your means thing, it's interesting to me. When I actually meet a legitimately wealthy person, and I am one also, the commonalities are striking, and they're simple things. Like, I want to just accent something you said there, and I want to maybe talk about it a little bit more too. Living below your means is an absolute. There's this vogue thing out here right now on social media, everyone says, get rid of all the money you make because it'll keep you hungry, right? Get rid of all the money you make, which is really stupid advice said during booming economies, which sounds really good when money just keeps flowing in. But what happens if and when that gets reduced or if and when that slows down? So it's like the worst advice by a bunch of people that don't know what they're talking about, that got wealthy like in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. I've been wealthy for 30 years. You've been wealthy a long time. The things we talk about actually work, right? And so I've lived below my means. And I want to just say this to everybody. I'm talking about like being a crazy person going, you know what? I spend $4 on a coffee at Starbucks. I can make one at home for 90 cents. I'm saving the $3 in some sort of save. Are you that nuts about it? Because I think if you don't save money when you don't have a lot, you're probably not going to save money when you do have a lot.
Absolutely. It's a habit. Like how you build wealth is a habit. And when you start developing that habit, when you have a little, whatever you develop, you're going to do the same thing when you have a lot. Yeah. So, I mean, I could go at any point in my life, I could have went and bought the Rolls Royce, the Bentley, the whatever. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to do it. I still drive a car. I never buy a brand new car. I never have debt on bad debt or car payments. I buy, like my Range Rover, I bought 3 years old, and I parked it right next to a client of mine that had a brand new one that paid $140,000 for it. And I'm like, that is the stupidest thing. Like, why wouldn't you buy it 3 years old? You could have got it at half price. Yes. You know, so I don't understand. I think the litmus test that someone can decide right now if they're living beyond their means is this one little tactic, is if you can't save, if you can't invest 20% of your money right now. If I say to you, the only way that you can get wealthy is to take 20% of what you're earning right now and you need to start investing it, here's what you invest in. And if you say, oh my gosh, I can't do it, you're overspending.
I so totally agree. And what's really great about this conversation is almost no one talks about this anymore. Yeah. Like, it's completely counterculture. Now it's like spend everything you make. I bought my first new car for my wife, by the way, not for me, last year. And I'm 51. I don't buy new cars. People go, man, your jets are unbelievable. They are unbelievable, and they're a freaking fortune, and I've never bought a brand new one. Yep. Why would I do that? Why would I buy a G550 that someone paid $55 million for, that 24 months later I can pay $22 million for, and 36 months later I can pay $15 million for? And I know those are huge numbers, but why would I spend $120,000 on a Range Rover where 18 months later I can buy the same damn thing for $68,000 or whatever the heck the math is on it? Right. I'm totally with you on that. Because I think, and by the way, if you're in a relationship, there's just two types of people in life. There are savers and spenders. And if you live alone, you're either a saver or a spender. You want to build the habit of being a saver and an investor. If you're married to somebody, I hope at least one of you is a saver. Here's a formula for a broke marriage: 2 spenders. Yes. Do you agree with that? 2 spenders 100%. That are in a marriage together are toast. They cannot physically make enough money to ever get wealthy because they spend. So I'm with you on that. Okay. Someone's listening and they say, all right, I'm actually listening to this and I have a job. And I don't think I always want to have one. The self-employed thing sounds a little better, but the business owner thing sounds really good. You have something in here that you talk about how to start a business while keeping your steady paycheck. I think you and I did it the same way in the same industry, but I'll let you talk about what you think one of those ways is.
So the easiest way to keep your job and do something else is to find, what do you already have experience in? What do you have skills in? This isn't about like start posting on the internet that you are a business coach if you've never built a business. Like, right. It drives me insane. Like, have integrity, what you have experience in, what you have skills in, and you can start doing that on the side for yourself. It opens you up to building a business. You can get an LLC. It opens you up to tax savings, which we talk about in the book too. Like when you are a business owner or a real estate estate investor, now you have the same thing that these massive corporations pay millions of dollars in lobbyists to get breaks. Now you have them too. So if you're doing something currently in your job, just do it for yourself. It could be going on Upwork or Fiverr. It could be, going to Facebook group in a community that you live in and say, hey, I'm an electrician, but I'm also taking a little bit of side jobs on the side. Contact me here. I've seen people build massive businesses, stringing lights and doing landscaping and turning into a real business so that they don't, it's easy for people to say, burn the boats, create the business. But sometimes if you have a family to depend on, that's reckless advice.
Man, like, you're totally right. And this is, again, everybody, why today is so important to me is I have real deep concerns about the advice I see being thrown around on social media and in a lot of coaching programs that will work when all of the economy is exploding.
Yes.
You almost, in a good economy, can't give somebody too much stupid advice because the tide keeps rising. Where you separate great advice from so-so or terrible advice is when the economy recesses to some extent. That's when all of the flaws in something is revealed. When there's a bunch of water flowing, you don't see all the rocks under the ocean. But when it starts to recess and the tide comes back, then you see the rocks and the bumps and the scary stuff. And so you're 100% right about that. If you have a family, maybe you shouldn't burn every single boat. Right. Maybe your kids need to eat. Maybe them going to school still matters. Maybe there's a transition period. Maybe there's a time where you're going to have 3 jobs, right? You're going to have your full-time job, another job, and your side hustle. And that's okay as well because it's going to make a great story for you someday.
And so maybe you don't want to stress out your relationship. You
Right.
know, sometimes people burn the boats, go all in, and then they're completely stressed out of their mind because now they have all this responsibility. Yeah. There's another way that you can still build wealth and still have a great quality of life. And I think that's the most important part of the whole thing is it's like a lot of the advice I hear, which I think is what you're referencing, is it's like there's this all or nothing mentality.
Yes.
But in these difficult times, it's kind of like you said with the rocks are still there. You're just now seeing them, but they were always there. And I think with any industry, any vertical, any type of market, it's always going to. When we did research, I looked at the last 40 years of every market, the S&P 500, the real estate market, and it always pulls back.
Right.
So it's like, and when you really look at the chart over time, that's why wealth, business, relationships, it's playing the long game. Because when you look at the chart, it always pulls back. But then in that opportunity, when you can double down because you've lived below your means, you've been able to invest, then you can double down in these dips and you can create more wealth than you ever would have if it was a straight up chart.
Oh my gosh, that's a fact. By the way, if it's a straight up chart, it doesn't let the little person ever get on the train.
Absolutely.
But when it dips is when small, economically small people like myself when I started, like when you started, it allows us to get into the game. If the chart just went straight up all the time, we've missed it.
That's right.
But when it dips, it's a good thing. That's what everybody needs to get. And I don't even know if we're in a big dip. We may be in a huge dip right now, and it may be not so big of a dip. I don't know. But what I do know is this is a great time to be living below your means, as is all the time. This idea that when you're doing anything, I love this concept for everybody, that when you're doing anything, that you want it to be a win-win-win.
Yes.
I've never even heard this before. So would you please explain that?
Well, so the win-win-win concept is there are many things in our life that we go, as long as I'm making money, I'm happy, right?
Yeah.
But there's some things that are also losses for other things. So for instance, to me, soda, if you sell soda for a living, there might be a win, lose, lose here. And what the first win is, I'm doing something I love and I'm making money. Okay, I got a win. But the second one is everyone's getting cavities and people are getting diabetes and they're getting sick and it might be destroying their consciousness. And I say that while I'm drinking a Sprite, so there's a hypocritical part of me.
And vodka.
Yeah, and vodka too. You offered it. That's why this is flowing so good. And the third one is, what does it do for the world? Like soda companies are also throwing plastic in the ocean, right? So the consciousness of the world, in my eyes, is dropping in certain products and certain things we're doing. But what we don't understand really is truly the lose-lose exists in your body. In other words, even though the lose-lose is outside of you, you have avatars of the outside in your body. So even though you might be making money, there can't be a fulfillment if it's destroying the planet because the universe can't support you, and the highest if you're also hurting things, right? So one thing that I noticed that's really interesting is that companies that do sell things like soda and are very successful, they're really good at selling a why. right? Like if you drink this beer, you'll get laid is the commercial, right? You'll have friends, you'll party. Do you realize that meditation and yoga tell you a how, but they don't say a why? Like, do you realize meditation will get you way more laid than Sprite, right? Like, and there's so many great things that come with meditation, but when you watch a video, it's like, I'm going to show you how.
Yes.
But I don't get why I'm supposed to. Well, you're going to transcend your entire past. You'll probably create a space to receive higher levels of health, better relationships, way more income, but you won't care because you'll be connected to yourself. So I like to do things that are a win-win-win. Does it expand my soul to do it? That's a deep question. Do I feel growth? Like you like doing this podcast because you change, right?
Certainly.
It's also a win because people that watch it are shifting.
Yes.
I'm shifting talking to you. I'm teaching myself right now.
Right, sure.
My events are called Evolving Out Loud because have you ever given someone advice and then you learn from the advice?
All the time, yes.
Isn't that weird? Sometimes we'll give people advice they aren't even asking.
Certainly.
Like they're like, I got a stomach ache. And you go, I think you should break up with her.
Right.
Single. And oh, this is for me.
Right.
Right? So Evolving Out Loud, my events are me. If there's a me that gives advice and then a me that learns from the advice, doesn't that mean there's two me's? Right? And the third win of your podcast, I'm doing two analogies at the same time.
I'm pulling them together. I get it.
The third one is, are people changing? Like, are you raising the success, the consciousness, the growth of the planet? This is in full purpose. There would be a lot more pain if we were just creating distracting, in this moment, nothing gossip, content, right?
Yes.
So,
by the way, I think you feel that way I think there's an emptiness when you have a conversation like that or a transaction like that, don't you? I think you feel an emptiness. There's an energy that is depleted from you when you have an interaction like that with somebody. And then there's an interaction like this where my energy is growing throughout it. There's something in my energy that's being fed. Do you think that's true?
Yes, I think that we're learning more and it's actually connecting us more. I think that the longer this goes, you notice that this kind of interview, like the farther it goes, the more in this moment you are.
Yes.
In some things we do, how come the farther we go, the more exhausted we are?
Yeah.
Like I do a 6-day event off the cuff. By day 4 and day 5, you'd think I'd be out of content, but the truth is the ego has been so removed because I've been in my creativity for 8 hours a day that by day 4 and day 5 and day 6, I'm just in total flow. Yeah. And I like doing long events just to access that. It's interesting because this also brings up a concept that's in the book that I bet you'll think is really cool that I want to offer people, which is the idea of A money, B money, and C money.
Okay.
A money is money that you spend on stuff to create an addictive distraction in the moment. So whether it's to have a big party, to buy the carton of beer, whatever. A money is just like, let's say you have 3 different people that each got $1 million. The A person spends it quickly on a bunch of parties, right? And whatever, the most expensive car, this is A money stuff, right? Okay. B money is when you put your money into something and it invests itself, right? That Robert Kiyosaki, right? I'm buying stocks and I'm buying...
You're an investor.
A liability, or assets versus liabilities, right? That's cool. What if we add a new consciousness of C money? C money are things that expand you. So if you take 2 months to move into a cabin and have no cell phone, who would you be on the other side of that? And would that be worth more? Going to a meditation retreat, buying a book like this, or your book, right? Things that will change literally who I am. Delegating to someone else the things that aren't a vibrational 10 for you to do. Having a personal trainer, a nutritionist. These are things that will change you. And when you change, you're more receptive in my eyes to receive more money because you actually killed off the story that sees itself as not worthy of it. So what I like to do is ask myself, is this a C money investment?
I love that. So there's 2 types of entrepreneurs out there. There's ones that are just getting started and there's ones that are stuck at some level, right? Let's talk to the ones that are getting started. Okay. What advice would you give, just in general?
Work in increments, follow the money. Follow the money. Don't follow your heart.
What do you mean by follow the money?
Follow the money. Find money. Find money. Who's got my money?
Close deals. Close deals.
Who's got my money? You know, not just close deals. You want to find money. Because you can close the deal if there's no money, then there's no money. So don't follow friendship. Don't follow love. Follow money. You single guys out there, you want the girl, follow the money. You follow the money, they'll follow it. They might not be gold diggers. They'll still like money. So I can line them up around the street if I get rich enough.
Okay. And then
follow the money for your department. Follow the money. When you get stuck, follow the money. Okay. I'm telling you, just make it simple. Follow the money. Is there money in this room? Is there money in this activity? Do these people have money? Is there any money at this dinner table? Am I eating where there's money? Is there money in this hotel? If there's no money there, don't go there.
Right. And money could be indirect too. Like in my business, the money could be, I'm going to get money if I recruit people.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah. People. So who's got money?
Right.
Bars don't have money.
Bars don't.
There's drunk people in them.
Right.
So who's got money? And by the way, if they're drunk people, they can't buy from you because tomorrow they're going to wake up and say, I didn't really want to do that.
Yeah, you're right. So the same advice for someone that's stuck is to follow money.
Look, if you're stuck, you know, if you're stuck, I would probably look at the people around you first. You know, you didn't get in this to get stuck. So somebody, my friend that I mentioned earlier that I gotten so much help from, it's like conditions don't just happen. They're made to happen. So terrorist attack, they're made to happen. Okay, wars are made to happen. Illiteracy is made to happen. It's not an accident. These things happen. Roaches show up in your apartment. That was made to happen. Somebody did that, right? So if your roof caves in, Puerto Rico, the storm. These aren't events. Dude, it's an island this big in the ocean, and they get hurricanes. Like that's going to happen. So I don't know why everybody's surprised.
Shocked, right.
So if you're stuck, somebody made that happen.
Yes.
Who was it? Was it you or was it your wife? Or your husband saying, you're working too hard.
Yeah.
You're working too hard. You need to relax. Or maybe it's your friends, or maybe you went to dinner and your family's like, you're working too much. I have my family members tell me that. I'm like, look, if you don't knock it off, I'm not coming back here.
I got that same stuff in the beginning. You look back 90, 120 days, you'll find the story. You
Yeah.
stopped doing something you used to do that kept you successful.
Yeah.
Right? You stopped prospecting, you stopped closing, you stopped recruiting, you stopped talking to people,
Yeah.
you stopped
Yeah.
making phone calls,
Yeah.
you stopped personal development, you stopped reading books, you stopped something in the
Somebody
background.
said, when's enough, Ed?
Right.
That's a natural question. I get it all the time.
Yeah.
I said, you're stuck.
You're stuck.
If you're asking that question, you're already stuck.
Yeah, and that's why they're not hungry anymore too.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Listen, this has been this is my favorite hour I've probably ever had on this kind of stuff.
Yeah, you told Tony the same thing.
I didn't tell Tony that. What I told him was that he was my dream guest.
Okay.
That's what I told him.
Okay.
And it's not that I didn't dream to have you.
Yeah.
Because I'll probably get more people watching it because you're on here. But here's what I want you to know about this guy right here. This dude, he seems pretty hardcore and intense. This is what I got, and he won't tell you this. He really cares about you. He really cares that you have a happier and better life. He cares about people. He's one of these guys with this huge heart that's wrapped in this relatively interesting exterior. And you know this, Johnny. The camera guy's nodding right now. He's funny. He can be goofy. He can be super intense. He can be pretty harsh. He can be abrasive. He can be warm. He can be all those things. But what that's all wrapped in, and inside this dude, he has a massive heart. He wants to help people. He wants the world to change. He's got hundreds of thousands of pieces of information out there that he put out for free to help people, to serve them. And I know today did that too, man.